Hello, hello. Great to see all of you here. So we are going to spend next moments with exploratory testing. Interesting stuff. One of my favorite topics. I always like to talk about this and do it quite often. So the video is awesome. It's a great idea. Really beautiful stuff. Let me fill in a few more words on my background so you get a little bit of idea of how I work, what I do. So I'm working as a trainer and consultant at Knowit for 15 years now. Total testing years more than 20, so it's been a long journey. I find myself spending more and more time with Agile and DevOps, and those are really also things that I would say are good for all the testers. You know, adapt yourself, include Agile, include Scrum Mastership, include DevOps into your careers. Those are good things. I'm also the chairman of Finnish Software Testing Board, and also the treasurer of International Software Testing Qualifications Board. So I tend to see lots of testing things also not in my work, but also in the volunteer activity. And the last thing from the slide, that you notice that I'm co-author of this book, Agile Testing Foundations as well. So interesting to write a book. That's cool. Just a few slides. One slide of Knowit. So where I work it's ICT services company in all Nordic countries and employs over 2,000 people. It just passed that limit last week, so I have a brand new slide here. A big company, all Nordic countries, in Stockholm Stock Exchange. So that's lovely. But that's all background. Let's rather dive into the topic of exploratory testing. So what is exploratory testing? That's a good question. There are so many answers to that, but I'm going to approach this from many angles and see. You can decide which one is your angle or what you like. So some of the characterizations out there, of course, they come from people like James Buck, Ken Kainer. So you can trace back exploratory testing theory and ideas into these people. So one basic thing is that exploratory testing means that you are creating your tests and executing them at the same time. And while you do that, you learn all the time. So the learning also helps you create the next test. So you listen to the world, you listen to your testing, you understand more and more based on that, and then you become better. So that's a big thing. It also means that testing tends to be done iteratively, bit by bit. So you don't think about the whole bunch of things beforehand. You do some prioritization, but essentially you go into testing and then decide one test at a time, one area at a time, where you actually want to go. So it is iterative. It is also continuous. So you can easily link it because of that into Agile projects and into DevOps type of deliveries. It can take the changes that are happening in software development quite easily, which is why it's a favored approach of testing within Agile projects. Quite typical. Let's go into exploratory testing terminology and see a little bit of what are these typical terms that come up with exploratory testing. So you've heard about exploratory word itself, exploratory testing. What is exploring? Exploring is really an adventure. It's an exploration of what you are finding. So if you're looking at the software, you can think about it as a new continent or new city or something new, and imagine yourself going around in this interesting new environment and trying to explore and see what's out there. Maybe you find something you expected, maybe you found something you didn't expect. One thing in exploratory testing flow is that you usually have a focus, and that focus can be called a mission, or it can be a testing area like the second bullet there. So it is a focus. You have a focus while you are testing. So you are not only walking around in the same way as you are in a new city. You are not only walking around. You probably have an idea that I want to see a church here, maybe, or maybe I want to see find a pub for beer, or many things. So you have a focus. So in exploratory testing as well, it is a focused activity. It's not just that you are testing simultaneously and deciding what to test next. You are actually taking it on purpose. You are just exploring on purpose, with the purpose. Another typical term is the testing session. So not all exploratory testing has sessions, but it is so typical, and I would say it's even something you really should do with exploratory testing. You should divide your time in exploratory testing into a number of sessions. That is always a good idea. So you want to know that the areas that are more important, more prioritized than other areas will get more of your time, will get more of those testing sessions that you have. So a testing session then typically is between half an hour and 2 hours. And why is it that length? The reason is the human psychology. People can focus on one thing at a time for a certain period. Some say it's 20 minutes, some say it's maximum 2 hours. So really when you decide what should be your length of a testing session, you need to observe and understand yourself. Do you know that you can focus on something without interruptions, with keeping the effectiveness up and up all the time? Can you do it for half an hour, 1 hour, 2 hours? So let's have a small poll. Who thinks they can do concentration without interruptions for 2 hours? 2 hours, anybody? Not very many. How about 1.5 hours? More people? 1 hour. Even more, I think this is biggest. Let's say half an hour, last one, half an hour. All right, so I think we converge on 1 hour average roughly, which is, this is the human psychology. There's a reason why lectures in schools and universities are typically 45 minutes, 1 hour of length. It is the same thing. So we take that into exploratory testing and we divide our focus into testing areas for one session at a time. During the testing session, we try not to do anything else. If needed, we can put headphones on, we can put the red flag somewhere saying next to our desk that, don't interrupt me, I will bite if you do. Whatever works. You try to get the uninterrupted time so you can actually focus on testing that particular area. So that is session-based test management. It's quite important. Now let's go into the understanding of why could it be a good idea to adapt your testing as you go. Decide what can be the next best test. So let's imagine some web shop. We can even take a concrete example. My favorite one is definitely Amazon. I buy lots of books in Amazon. I like to read. So imagine Amazon or imagine your favorite web shop. So what if you go into the system, you log in, you go into the shopping basket or shopping cart, and you actually find something there. Now, if you had a test that says, go to shopping basket, check if there's something there, expected result, 0, nothing, but still there's something there. What would you think? Is that correct functionality or is that actually a problem? Well, what is it? It could be both, of course. We could argument it's typically it should be 0, but maybe it would be a good idea that if you are a returning customer and maybe you were interrupted just before an important meeting, you were about to buy something and then you were interrupted and you just left the computer there, and when you then do a meeting, you come back from a meeting, you realize your session in the web shop has expired, you log back in, and it would be very nice to continue from the same spot. It would be nice to have something in the shopping basket. Right. So it actually could be a good functionality that the web shop, Amazon, remembers your ongoing activity and sort of lets you continue where you left off. But it might not say that in a requirement. So if you take this into sort of a comparison between plan-driven testing scripted testing, and then exploratory testing. In plan-driven testing, you would have a test case, and then you encounter a strange situation. You have two choices. You can try to make a defect report, or you can decide that maybe it is a functionality. I think I need to talk to somebody. You talk to some business analyst and ask if it's an actual problem or not, and then you might end up updating test case, running your test cases again, and then you can maybe not file a defect report, or again you can decide it is a defect. But so it's a long journey, which is, from exploratory testing point of view, a little bit unnecessary. Because exploratory testing point of view thinks that, no, this is normal. This is very, very normal. You find something interesting that's, on the contrary, it's not a problem that leads you into unnecessary bureaucratic steps. It is actually a very good thing. You found something interesting. Yeah, I can test around this idea a bit more. I can find maybe more problems. So it's a good thing. So this is how exploratory testing changes your life. It makes the surprises in a system to be a good thing, that enable you to do more testing and actually to be faster in your testing. They are not something monotonous that keeps on happening routinely. So to take that into a theory, the learning that happens in your exploratory testing is this. So you take one step at a time. You test something on the left. The test reveals you something. You observe what happens. The observation doesn't necessarily mean that you report a defect. It could be that you report a defect. But more importantly, you make an interpretation. So you interpret, what does it mean? What did you see? The shopping basket had an item there. What does it mean? You observe, interpret, and make an opinion based on that. And your opinion matters, because your opinion then leads you into your next test case design, your next designing of actions, and then to your next test. So you could, for example, taking this shopping basket example further, you could think of ways of getting the shopping basket full in other ways. And you can try to figure out ways to empty it in many ways. So actually you get to design many actions based on this interesting, surprising finding. So this is the learning cycle that happens all the time. And you want to do this learning cycle. You don't want to be a machine that just tests, reports, take the next test and report against that. You actually want to learn all the time. And the point is that the learning is always there for your taking. You just need to observe it and use it. So that's important. Now, of course, you can learn in very many different ways. It's not only the testing itself, the test itself. It can be the whole system. It can be the customer. It can be the whole context of what you are doing. So you can actually understand how a system has changed. You can maybe try to understand a little bit better how the customers are actually working. You can try to understand which are the areas which are more faulty than others. Is there a high defect density somewhere, in other words? You could try to understand how the system works in an architectural way, from technological point of view, and make use of that understanding. Maybe your Amazon web shop, maybe it connects to some system of logistics that sends books out, maybe it connects to some invoicing system, and maybe those links enable some functionality, and maybe they also stop some functionality. So it's up to you to decide how it is, and that's big learning to be done. Another type of learning is people. Other people within your testing team, or the development people, or your business analysts, your product owners, anybody who is there. And of course, one more person is yourself. So you can observe how people work. Try to understand what makes them do things as they do in a software project. You can try to understand why there are lots of defects coming from this particular developer. Maybe he or she is a new developer. You can try to understand how the other exploratory tester is so much more effective than you are. Maybe what does the person do? Is there something you can learn from there? So you can do this, and you can also do the learning systematically. Typical way to do it is to pair up, do pair testing, and then you can observe somebody continuously, let's say 1 day at a time. Today you pair up with another tester, tomorrow you pair up with a developer, day after maybe you take a product owner and you think from a little bit more from business perspective on that day. And you learn. And all the learning makes you a better tester, and it helps also directly in a testing project that you are working at that given time. So that's how it works. How about knowledge perspective? Exploratory testing also works because it uses more knowledge. It uses the knowledge of everybody in the team, but it also uses knowledge that's gathered in the world. It can use the knowledge from books, it can use checklists, it can use anything on the internet, some interesting heuristics that you can find there, for example. It can use many things. So knowledge perspective is one base for learning as well. Now how about then the tester perspective? Why would you as a tester want to be in exploratory testing? I think the key term is actually something that's not even written on the slide exactly, but it is fun. Exploratory testing is so much more fun because it enables you to do the creative, interesting tasks, try new things all the time, enables you to do something different each time you are doing a new test. So you are not again a machine, you are able to do the nice stuff in a nice order, in new order. Keep yourself motivated in your testing all the time. But also, of course, it has more results, so you get more coverage, you get more test cases done, you find more defects, and all this happens in the same time than with the plan-driven approach. So testers like to have fun, and they like to do it in a way that also has more results. So testers approach. Now how about management? Can you get your project management, your top management along? Yes, you can. These people are usually motivated with getting things done. In the money perspective there, getting more with same resources, getting more in same time. You can have these arguments, and exploratory testing actually works very well from these points of view. We also might have some side goals, like the last bullet there, so you can also get additional learning happening otherwise. It's quite common that big projects also need to plan not only delivery of some software or system, but also they need to teach their end users, their customers, into usage of the system. Depending on the system, of course. Some systems are very intuitive, but some require teaching. So you can actually take these people who are supposed to use a system in the end to be part of your testing team. You test in pairs using exploratory testing approach, and ta-dam, there's no more separate training hours. Learning happens as you test. So it's very nice way to do it. Now another angle of why exploratory testing it is to think about a choice of different testing styles and think about the level of systematicness of these styles, and try to understand if you actually want to do one of these things or all of these things in your project. So let's think about them from right to left first. So you notice on the right that there's test automation. Test automation obviously doesn't work if it's not very precisely scripted. So you do need to have detailed steps, detailed values. This is how a script runs in an automatic way. If you go step left, you have a detailed test case type of testing, which would be the traditional testing in a way. So you take some requirements, you design test cases step by step, very detailed, so that somebody else could maybe take your test case and execute it. This is often the reasoning why this sort of testing happens. The next one is a high-level test case. So that that means that you drop the detail away from test cases. You only have titles, and that's it. You leave the execution decisions to the tester. But still, the test cases have been named, so there's already a tendency of saying beforehand that you need to do this and that test, maybe even with this and that value. So it's only the details that are left to the experience of a tester. So it's not really that useful. But as a continuum, you notice that we actually approach the level of systematicness of the exploratory testing and session-based test management, SBTM. So if we go there, so we have the ET and ET plus SBTM, these two areas here. If you take a look at the, let's talk about ET first. So exploratory testing is just what we discussed, that you don't plan ahead. You plan a little bit of testing areas, but you don't plan with test case level beforehand. That's something you decide one by one during your testing. But it could be a little bit hard to understand what's happening and control what's happening there. So then the session-based test management, so bringing in the sessions to quantify how much time, how many sessions you actually use for each area, it helps to bring clarity and a bit of control as well into your system. So the whole testing approach is a bit more systematic. If you can say, I used that many hours, maybe you got that and that much coverage, you could also say that into a certain testing area with the SBTM. So you are actually quite close to the high-level test cases. If you look at the leftmost thing there, so just ad hoc testing, my experience is that too many people actually think they're doing exploratory testing, but what they're really doing is that they have dropped all the documentation, they just take the software and start testing. So they are leaving no trace of what we are doing. They are not planning ahead at all, which area is a little bit more important than another area. They don't do any of those big decisions, which could be done very quickly. They just test a little bit, and if anybody from outside of the team or of a tester would like to know, when are you ready? When is this thing actually ready? There's no answer. So, things happen during 1 week, and then after that, what's next? You don't know. So it can be a very interesting problem actually for people to manage. So the question is actually then, how do you bring more transparency into your testing? And it is exactly with the note-taking, with the sessions, and so the good approach usually then is to be somewhere in the middle. So you could choose anywhere something in the left, maybe just a little bit of a testing is ad hoc testing. Maybe you have test automation, any agile project, any DevOps project. Nowadays needs to have automation, so you have some or a lot of that. You probably don't need too much of the test cases designed earlier. You might in some circumstances, but you do need exploratory testing, especially if it's done in a session-based, in a management way, in a quantified way. So to take this picture into another view, you could have purely scripted testing, or you could have purely exploratory testing. But in reality, any project needs to make their own decisions and decide, this is the type of testing we do. So for example, you could be here in the middle, or you could be here. Meaning that part of your testing is exploratory, and part of it is pre-designed tests, maybe automation tests, maybe some manual tests as well. This strategy together is your exploratory testing. So this is how it is. You need to make decisions. Where does exploratory testing fit in your system? But let's go into the actual detail. How is it done? So it's actually quite simple. You take a test charger, that is your planning. When you during a test charger, you decide testing areas and number of sessions per testing area, and then you go into test sessions. In a session, you keep notes or log. And the notes are your traceability. They will tell you and also others what has happened during your testing. And of course you find bugs, you create bug reports. And at the end of each debriefing, each session you have debriefing, and the debriefing usually happens via a dashboard. So you also try to keep a always up-to-date, easy to see way of seeing your results, your progress. I'm almost done here, yellow color, I'm done here, green color, and so on. So plan, session, debriefing, and that cycle just repeats. If you take an analogy of that, I took these screenshots in a conference in Prague, where on one evening I went for a run, and it was actually quite interesting. So my test charter was to find something nice, a nice area to run in, which is usually a park, something green. So my charter was just, mission was look for green. Still my requirement, so my map in my mobile phone was not really that detailed. It didn't show too much green, it showed mostly gray, just a little bit of green on the corner there, as you can see, but that was like 100 meters only. So I started running. I ran south and then a little bit to the east, and on the way there I kept notes, of course. I had automatic note taking, so I had a sports watch. So my automatic note taking was keeping a GPS track and heart rate and everything, and I was able to see afterwards and also partially online what was happening. So you notice that things happened, and so I didn't need to pay attention into how to make the notes, except when I actually found the bug, or when my mission was fulfilled and the mission was finding the green. So at that point on the map, the arrow is, I found this very nice place with lots of green, an actual park, maybe wasteland, hard to say, but it was very nice to run there, even a small nice stream next to me there. So looking back at the chart here, at the map, it's all gray. You would think it's an industrial area, but I found my bug. So the analogy again is that requirements are never good enough. You don't even need them in exploratory testing. All you need is a mission. You go for a mission, you find a mission, you are there. That's how it works. So how does then test design work in test charter? So test charter is the only thing you do before you start testing. And with test charter, shouldn't take more than a very small amount of your time. It could be 15 minutes, it could be half an hour. It shouldn't be many days or many weeks. Depending, of course, how big your whole system is. It might take more than half an hour, but it can't take too much time. So in the charter, you just decide the testing areas that you want to focus on. So basically, you divide your whole system into a number of testing areas, a small number, 20, 30, something like that. And then you decide which ones are more important than other ones. And based on that decision, you then allocate number of sessions, so time, to each of those sessions. So basically, more coverage means more time, more sessions. Less coverage, less time. So very straightforward. So in exploratory testing, you can keep things simple. Simple is beautiful and it's fast, so that's all you need to do. And then you start creating charters, and you might want to put lots of stuff in the charters, including what can be tested, what documents you might take with you when you start your testing, what kind of errors you might have. So you might get ideas, of course, when you do your planning. I probably get this sort of problem. I might have these sort of risks that might happen if a real customer was using this area. So it could be actually quite many things. The classic example is this from James Buck. There you have the areas on the left, this column here. When you decide a little bit about the coverage that you are aiming in each area, it could be something quantifiable by some tool, it could be hours or sessions. Then you might decide, so these are your initial ideas, you might decide that some practice might work well, some documents might be useful, some results might be expected, some typical errors might be happening maybe in this area, some risks could take place in real life by a real user. So this is all. If you look at the quantity of text there, it's not that much. It shouldn't take more than 2 minutes to write this. If it's more, I think you should learn to be faster. So this is a classic example. Another example is to show you that there are many ways and many views to exploratory testing is that the column headings, they could be something else as well. They could be purpose. So what are you trying to focus on for one session at a time? They could be priority. In the other previous slide, it was coverage. It could be a priority. Just think about what is more important than another area. And it could be lots of other stuff that you can think about while you do it. Again, even if you call your charter headings, title headings, something like that, or something like that, it shouldn't take too much time. 15 minutes, half an hour, remember that. A typical way to use it is via an Excel. Most people with exploratory testing start with Excel, then they graduate, let's say maybe to something more compatible with their system. But Excel is an easy place to start because everybody has an Excel. There are even companies who don't allow any other installations that testers might like because of some very strict security policies. So people are just stuck with Excel in the end. Excel is a good starting point where you can decide together as a team or organization what type of things you want to plan in this charter, and then you can easily enforce this. Excel is something you can easily give out to people and let them use that. Good. Now when you are in testing then, what do you use? The charter is obviously there, but there's also a number of other stuff. Lots of learning, lots of experience that's out there by different people that you can use. So you are not alone. Even without experience, you are not alone. You can still test quite well. Just take a list of heuristics, take a list of bug taxonomy. Here's an example of bug taxonomy. So there are a list of typical errors out there. Just take one of these lists and take one of the items there and think about it. Load conditions. Have I tested against load conditions? No. Okay, I'll test. Maybe I find problems that are related to load conditions. So these are the questions you can do. Another typical aid is heuristics. So heuristics are something a little bit similar to test case design techniques, except that they are more rules of thumb. That's what heuristic means. So more rules of thumb that give you the idea of, this might be good. This might be what I actually want to do. So for example, crude heuristic means that whatever is your system, you can try to create a new thing, a new entry. You can read it, update it, delete it. That's a good heuristic. Easy to remember, easy to use from the back of your head. You don't need to have a piece of paper or a formal technique to do that. You can find more bugs with that. While you do your testing, you need to have a professional attitude. That means keep your focus one session at a time. It also means make notes. It also means that don't take interruptions from anybody else. So the attitude is what makes exploratory testing differ really from ad hoc testing. You have a focus, you keep notes. The tests are actually designed during the test execution. So how that happens, the key is your thinking. So you think, you make use of your thinking. You are surprised about something, you notice that, you look around, try to understand what could be interesting, and then you make use of that. You could say backward thinking, oh, I'm surprised about this, can I get into this result some other way? Maybe I go to another part of the system and try to do it other way. So that's backwards thinking. So you make use of these thinking skills while you test, and that when you decide about your next test. And another technique that you absolutely need is note-taking, because some person somewhere will want to know what did you do. So you need to be fast in typing or in using some note-taking tool. So the point is that keep a record of what you did, where you went, how you navigated, what value you used. It can be fast when you practice. Typical way to be a bit faster is to use something a bit more than just a piece of paper. So mind maps, for example, are very useful, my favorite. So when I do exploratory testing, I always use a mind map. I use it as a charter. I also use it as a log or as notes, because you can categorize things in a mind map while you do it. It happens on the fly. So it's very readable, it's very concise, it's quick to write. So one way of note-taking tools. Another part of note-taking is, of course, the defect. So if you find a defect, you want to put that into the defect management system. Then the choice is, do you do it immediately during the session, or do you do it afterwards? I would say afterwards is better, because then you can focus during a session to find more of the problems, to do more testing. So you need to make enough notes, of course, so that after 2 hours you remember how to write the proper defect report. Anyway, defect logs are needed as well. Then you need the testing dashboard, so you want to also show where you are all the time. And the easy way, the exploratory testing way, really is to show a dashboard. It can and should be the same structure as your charter, so that people know that this is what I was planning and this is what I actually got in the end. And then you can use color coding to show where you are, to show where your testing is, but also to show what you think about the quality level of your target. So you can measure testing in exploratory testing. It's not just that time has spent, it's also that you get absolute metrics. You can count, of course, the time. You can also count the coverage. It is maybe a bit more subjective because it's often opinion of a tester, but you can measure in exploratory testing, and you should. You should measure so that you can be even better, even faster in your exploratory testing. Here I have some example tools. So I already mentioned mind mapping and Excels, and basically purposes are note-taking, charter creation, and then defect reporting, bug reporting right here. The interesting thing is that the world is going towards more and more test management tools which are including the exploratory testing. So that is a very positive thing. Earlier years, exploratory testers were always alone with their tools. In current reality, lots of big vendors are including testing testing tool support there, so that you can log with the video or screenshots automatically while you are testing, so you don't need to type your information, only make an opinion of this is maybe a surprise, this is maybe a problem, this is maybe a defect. And also the charters are included in the same tools. All right, so let's then go to who can do it. I guess the key thing is that anyone. People who are more likely to do it are people who can take risks, like new things, like to understand how things are done. So that is the thing. And then you got also people who need to be learning skills. I need to speed up just a little bit to make it to the last slide. Then what is important for a tester is to improve your thinking skills. So that is very, very crucial. So you need to be a person who can improve, who can understand how they think, can emphasize what's happening. And let's go to my last slide. So I've collected here a view of exploratory testing in future. Now in some session today already we heard about artificial intelligence. I think that will change the part of exploratory tester a little bit. So an exploratory tester in near future will also have AI to help in routine tasks of trying different values. So an exploratory tester, in other words, can be even more effective. Another thing is that the tool suites are going to include also exploratory testing support. That's definitely happening. Also, everybody is going to Agile and DevOps, and that means that the manual testing everywhere will be exploratory testing. But also test automation and any tools, not only AI, but any tools will be of help to exploratory tester. So exploratory testing will not be only manual testing, like understood today. It will be a combination of using tools and manual testing in the same time. So there's lots to do in the future for exploratory testing. There's lots to do for manual testers, but exploratory testing is also useful for everybody. So give it a try. If you haven't, make it a practice to your regular lives. And with that, I'd like to thank everybody.
Okay, so we have the time for only one and the last question because we are short on time.
Hello, my name is Olga. Question is following: how we can maybe teach new generation to be self-motivated in testing and to be more interested in their job?
I think that's a very good question, but I think exploratory testing really is the answer. That is the most interesting way to test. That is the most fun way to test. So if you want to make people motivated in testing, you show them exploratory testing. You show them the freedom and creativity in exploratory testing, and say, but this is testing. This is so much fun. And they need to have, of course, support of other projects. So you want to have a test automation in place. You want to have lots of other types of testing with tools happening, so that then a manual tester is taking exploratory testing into use. It is building on the base of good quality that is already there. So I think that's the fun part. Is actually the answer. It's fun.
Okay, thank you for the answer. Thank you for your nice presentation. Here is the prize from the organizers.
Thank you very much. Thank you again.